If you're like me, you probably had to do something hard today. I mean, personally, I hate washing out socks. That's why we made Geico.com so exceedingly easy. Easy to see how much you could save on car insurance, easy to review and update your policy, change of address. Just a few clicks and you're done. Visit Geico.com today, because life is hard enough. I mean, I don't even wear socks.
Blog Talk Radio.
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Crossfire the Crusader, and you're listening to Superhero Academy, the show where everybody has something to teach and everybody has something to learn. And with me this week, we have our animal-loving friend, PHERIS, who's going to talk to us about something called animal rehab therapy and her work in that. So, people, if you want to call in and be part of the show, the number is 917-889-3317. That's 917-889-3317. And PHERIS, tell our listeners hello and a little bit about what you do.
Hello, Crossfire. My name is PHERIS, and first of all, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on your show and talk about something that's really important to me. I work with pet-assisted therapy, and usually what I do is it's me taking my dog and going into hospitals, senior centers, and other places, and just letting my dog visit with other people. And you don't see a lot of people doing it, and that's really sad because if you figure there's 4.3 million animals are handled by shelters every year. There are hundreds of dogs out there that would be perfect for this with just a little training, and of course my experience is a little more unique because my dog is named Jazz, and she's an American Staffordshire Terrier, which, if you're familiar with the breed, is also being lumped into the pit bull category. So for me, it's a little bit of a double moment. It's a very teachable moment because a lot of people who, when I come in and say, I'm coming with Jazz, I guess they don't really understand what an American Staffordshire Terrier is. And so when I come in the door and she's got her vest on, it's like, oh, my God, that's a pit bull. And I'm like, well, yeah, she is part of the pit bull family. I'm like, but not all pit bulls are me. So for me, it's also a chance to kind of prove that not every pit bull you run into is bred for fighting, has been a fighting dog. Once you get to meet my dog, Jazz, she's a sweet dog. She really just, all she wants to do is be a part of the crowd, be a part of the scene. She's so sweet. And usually by the time I leave, people have a totally different picture of a pit bull. So, how did I start with her? I actually kind of ended up with Jazz by accident. I was with a friend. They were looking for a dog, and we were walking by, and there was this, rather, timid-looking dog in the cage. And she's like, oh, she's really sweet, but, I don't know if I can my apartment will allow pit bull. So we looked at her. She was kind of on the small side, and my friend decided she was going to take the dog. So got back home the next morning. She calls me. My landlord's furious. I can't have this dog. It's pit bull. I've got to find it a home, but I don't want to take it back to the pound. So she's like, well, can you take it and try to find another home for it? I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. And the rest is history. She came into our lives. She kind of made herself at home, and, well, we found her a new home. She never left ours. So,
tell me a little bit about the training a dog has to go through for this, and what a therapy session with the pet. What kind of treatment would this be used for and such like that?
Well, it could be used. We've done visits where we've gone to the children's hospital, and you're just visiting children that are really they're too sick or they're too weak to get up and really play. It's just kind of going in and bringing in a new experience for somebody who's either hospital bound or homebound or is in a care center. The training, it's real, it's real basic. You want to make sure that the dog doesn't spook real easily, is not dog aggressive or aggressive towards other animals. Then once you get that, once they have a calm and even temperament, you want to do the basic obedience. Come, sit, stay, down. Those are all. Housebroken is wonderful. The dog can be of any size. If it's a smaller dog like a Yorkshire Terrier or a Chihuahua, that's great because then it can be a lap dog. But I've seen Goldens, I've seen Labradors, I've seen Poodles, Irish Setters, any kind of dog can do it. It also extends to cats, critters, and by critters I mean, birds.
Yeah,
kind of rodents.
Years ago, I worked in a nursing home, and we had our assistant director of nursing had a hedgehog, and she would bring him when the therapist there, and she would take this hedgehog along a ugly little fur ball thing, with spikes all over,
Well, but
and she would take it and
get out.
Play with it. It was really, and the therapist would, she would come in there and the therapist would work with them, and it was just really neat to watch them. They were excited to go do their physical therapy because they got to work with the thing afterwards.
Yeah, well, with hedgehogs you don't see a lot of them, So for somebody who, that's a unique experience, and that's something that they understand that it's a weaker animal, and that it's just a little thing. It's something to break up the everyday routine.
Yeah.
If you have a dog or a cat or a bird that can do a trick, if it's a bird and it can speak, that just makes it even better. Once you decide you want to do this, you want to look into finding a pet therapy organization that's close to you. You want to find out what they need, what they're requiring, and a good location that you can go to get that information will be www.therapyanimals.org, and that's THERAP as in Paul, Y, animals.org, and that will give you all the basic information. It'll help you find a therapy animal group close to you. You're going to need to do big one is you're going to need to make sure that the animal is housebroken. And then you'll need to do obedience and probably get a canine good citizen certificate. With my dog, it was just very much of, like I said, when I got her, she was an abused animal. My family has only owned used at shelter dogs. Only because, it's a second chance. You're giving another animal a second chance. So you're kind of, at the same time while you're working on this, the animal comes to learn that not all humans are bad and they can trust again. But at the same time, you're also making somebody else's life a little easier, a little happier. It's pretty straightforward. I didn't use her dog food that we normally give her, so I would use pieces of cooked chicken we give her, the packages of the semi-moist dog food, and and that would be what I would use for training, baked chicken, dog treats type of thing. And you always want to make it fun for the dog. The minute they stop having fun, training session's over. So a lot of ours was, like I would go and I would hide behind something and I would have her come find me. Or, now she's learning where if I stop, she immediately sits. She used to be really jumpy. She would jump up on everybody because she was glad to see you. That was something we worked with. Now she doesn't jump. She's also really funny because, when I first got her, there was a lot of sitting on my lap and sitting on the couch, and now she thinks she's a lap dog. And it's 60 pounds. That's not really a lap dog.
I saw somebody with that Chihuahua and a great Golden Retriever that grew up at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And he thought he was the same size as her, and he was bigger than me.
Yeah.
And he would chase her.
I honestly believe.
Table, and he'd run to the coffee table. And
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that was one of the things we did with Jazz is, once we welcomed her into the house, it was, oh, come on, Jazz, come up on the furniture, or I would be sitting in my room and sitting on the bed. She would get up and she would climb into my lap. Because when I first got her, she was kind of on the small side. Well, of course, now she thinks she's a lap dog. But at, 65 pounds or 60 pounds, and she's probably going to be upward of like 70 or 80 pounds. She's not really a lap dog anymore. But she does love being around people. She, and she can tell when she knows when I pull out that vest that we're going to work. And she enjoys it. It's, it's a chance for her to get out and to meet people. One of the big ones is this week we have the All-Star baseball game in Phoenix. So we're going to try to take her to the All-Star game and see how she does. But if you want your animal to do therapy, take them everywhere with you. Expose them to noise. Expose them to people. Just get them out and get them, and see what they react to. See what, because generally if they react fearfully to something, then okay, that's what I've got to work on. Fireworks are always a big thing for animals, especially dogs. If you can work with them to get them used to loud noises or sudden noises so that they're not, freaking out or bolting, then that's a good thing. Take them out and train. And when you go through the pet therapy organizations, they'll give you a vest that says in training, and then they'll give you a vest that says therapy dog. One of the things that I had to be aware of is when we would go out in public to train, kids with animals are just like, oh, and they run. And, it's a magnet for kids. And one of the things that I had to be very mindful of was kids that were running up behind the dog. Because, the dog only has, but so far, peripheral vision. And, dogs. Kids love animals. But it's, it can be it can be a little bit of a startle for a dog if you just come up behind. So usually if kids are kind of looking at the dog, I'll stop the training and go, would you like to come meet the dog? And that way I can get the dog turned around so she can see the person that's coming at her. And I usually teach children that you don't ever want to startle a dog. You always want to come up to a dog so they can see you, and then, take your hand and put it down at the dog's level and let the dog sniff. Just because dogs, like other animals, dogs get their information about the world through scent. So you putting down your hand and letting the dog sniff your hand is kind of like, me walking up to you and saying, hi, Crossfire, I'm Phoenix PHERIS, So it's, and I also tell the kids that, sometimes she's not into sometimes she's not into it, and she'll sniff and she'll kind of pull back. It's not a problem, but, you never want to startle an animal because, 99% of the time, if the owner's right there, you're fine, but it's still not a good idea to startle an animal, just for safety. So, and usually, Oh, yeah.
One of the things I ask everybody, one of the things I ask everybody when they come on here, in doing what you do, there's always those moments that just stick out in your mind, things where the impact of what you've done is just overwhelming. You know, you talk about it and you get that lump in your throat, you know, that it's just so emotionally powerful that you've seen that what you've done has changed someone's life. Share a couple of those moments with us if you can.
Well, I think the one moment that we had was the first moment that I had that really kind of, got to me was we had gone to, they had opened a new children's hospital here in Mesa, and we went to the opening of that, and there was a little girl that was very, very sick, and she had leukemia, and it had it was affecting lungs and all that. And we walked in, and the mom was like, "What?" When she saw the dog, she was like, "Well, I don't know. She's kind of afraid of big dogs." I said, "Well, we'll start off. We'll walk to the door, and we'll just kind of see how it goes from there." And we walked kind of to the doorway, and she sat up, and you could tell she was really weak. And she sat up, and she kind of looked at the doorway, and I'm not really sure she was totally awake yet, but she went, "Dog." So we walked in, and I said, "Hi, my name is, PHERIS, and this is my dog, Jazz." And she didn't even, and most adults see, "Oh, Jazz is a pit bull." Nope, she didn't see pit bull. She saw dog. So with the help of her father, we were able to lift the dog up onto the bed. And, and I think animals are very smart. They can sense more than we can. And when she got on the bed, Jazz kind of looked at the little girl and was, and suddenly was just walking very gently. She kind of went over and laid next to the girl. And, she was sitting there petting the dog. And, and she was, she was just content to lie next to the dog, lie next to the child, and the child was perfectly content with her. And she kind of dozed off with the dog. And, I figured, okay, well, she's asleep. We'll take the dog and we'll go. Jazz wouldn't leave her side. There was no amount of, "Come on, Jazz." There was no amount of calling her name that was going to get her to move. And, the mother explained to me that, they had done chemo, they had done all the alternative treatments, and it was kind of a case of the doctors had taken, you know what, at this point in time, just make her comfortable and spend and make the last moments of her life the best you can. Well, what happened, while we're sitting there and talking about her case, she flatlined. And I was just like, oh gosh, this is gonna be horrible. The doctors all came in, and they didn't try to move Jazz. I mean, Jazz wasn't budging. So they got her heart started again, and the little girl kind of woke up, and she was like, "Hey, Mom," she called her mom over, and she was like, I think it's time for me to go. And I was just like, and I'm going to start tearing up here in a minute. And she was like, "Well, would it be all right if Jazz stayed with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine with me." And I thinking she was just going to go back to sleep. Long and short of the story is that Jazz stayed with her until she finally died. She finally passed away. And the last things that she said to her mom was that Jazz, in that few last moments, she finally felt like she had the dog that because of her health she could never have. So that it was that companionship, and she drifted off to sleep petting the dog, and she just never woke up. And when she was finally gone, Jazz kind of just got up off the bed and edged around her carefully and came over. And I've never heard her whimper. She came over and she kind of put her head on, against my arm, and she whimpered, and that was how I knew, But when you look back, the little girl had a smile on her face when she passed. And so I was like, wow, that's and her parents were crying, but it was a happy cry because she wasn't in pain. She didn't suffer. She was surrounded by the people that she loved. She was surrounded by a dog. Her parents were there. Her siblings were there. So, for me, that was a really emotional moment because I had never being in a room where a child has passed away. And, you know, that's, for a parent, that's a hard thing to do, is to watch your child die. But the fact that Jazz made her feel comfortable enough where she can tell her mom, I think it's time for me to go, you know. And I still talk to that family. You know, on the birthdays, I'll take Jazz out and we'll visit the child's grave. And it's so funny because they can always tell if I've been there before they have, because I'll leave, you know, her favorite flowers were carnations. So I'll tie off a bunch of carnations and leave a dog, you know, leave like a dog bone tied to the flowers so that, you know, they know that Jazz was there. And they're like, we always, you know, now it's gotten to the point where our kids always look for the flowers with the dog bone tied to it. So, and actually now that family they have a standard poodle, and they've actually started to do the therapy dog as well. So it's you know,
wow.
It's a very, you know, it's a very give it forward type of thing. So I've seen Jazz, another moment.
I'm speechless. That is a powerful moment there. I mean, and like I tell people, it's simple little things that you do that has emotion impact. You know, it's not the great newsworthy stories, but you know, this simple little thing. Just put the dog on the bed next to the little girl.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. I mean, I'm crying here.
Oh yeah. And you know, a friend of mine I have a cousin that lives in Florida, and of course everybody has heard the Kaylee Anthony story. Well, my girlfriend was like, hey, I'm going to go to Florida. I'm going to help search for Kaylee Anthony. And she's like, would you mind if I took Jazz? And I'm like going, okay. I'd never let her out of my sight. Well, Jazz helped to search for Kaylee Anthony. But that's a whole nother, you know, I'm not going to go into that story because that's, you know, that whole Kaylee Anthony story is just heartbreaking. But she called me and she called me on my cell phone and she's like, hey, we're in Florida. I'm like, okay, yeah. She goes, your dog is actually, you know, apparently they had a jacket of hers, of Kaylee Anthony's laying nearby. Jazz sniffed it and was helping. You know, she'd never been trained as a search and rescue dog. But she was, you know, I don't know if she knew what she was looking for, but she kind of, you know, every so often she'd put her head down and she'd kind of, you know, and I'm like, what are you doing with my dog, you know? And she's like, well, I don't know, you know, but he would follow the police dogs. And I'm going, what are you doing with my dog? You know, but so I think we're going to start looking into maybe seeing about search and rescue, but, you know, right now we're just trying to do the therapy dogs. But, I mean, you know, and it's so weird because, like, if a siren sounds on the television, she gets, you know, Chad gets really excited. I don't know if dogs have, you know, previous lives, but she was been a police dog in a previous life. Because all she has to do is, you know, hear a siren or see a flashing red light, and she's immediately got her face up against the window. I'm getting off topic here. Another really powerful moment that we had was I went to a senior center, and we took Jazz, and this was kind of a teachable moment for pit bulls, and the director met us, and she's like, whoa, that's a pit bull. And I'm going, yeah, it's a pit bull. You know, I'm like, the technical term for it is an American Staffordshire Terrier. And he was like, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with having you in the center. And, you know, and I asked him why, and it turned out that he had been bit by a pit bull as a child. Because, you know, in the neighborhood that he grew up with, there was somebody that was raising the dogs for fighting. And he just, you know, happened to be one of those wrong place, wrong time stories. And I was like, well, you know, let me do this. Let me have you meet Jazz. And, you know, and then if you're still not comfortable with them, I understand that. That's fine. You know, Jazz and I will go on to the next stop. I said, but just try to, you know, just let me introduce you to her. So I walked in, and I think Jazz could sense that there was some fear. So she was, you know, extremely gentle, extremely, you know, and, you know, it would be a case of I would stop walking, she would immediately sit down and look at me. And that's usually what I've trained her to do is if we stop, she immediately sits down and she watches me for a clue. And I kind of, he walked into the room and he was like, "That's Jazz?" And I'm like, "Yep, that would be the dog." And, showed him how to, approach the dog. And he sat down in a chair and was like, he started petting her. Immediately, Jazz jumped up in his lap. And he kind of sat there with a sudden look on his face. And, she sat down on his lap, and turned around and licked his face. And that was it. I mean, he was like, "Oh, she's such a sweet dog," and she's got this little stub of a tail. So he put her down on the floor, and next thing I know, her butt's wagging, and she's just licking his face, and she's jumping up on it, And he's like, "Oh, what a sweet," And, so for me, that was that was considered a win for me, because you always see the shows like the court shows where, this pit bull attacked my dog and I had to do all these medical expenses. You always, and then if you watch like Animal Planet, they have, pit boss and pit bulls and parolees, and and you always kind of it always seems like every time you see a pit bull, it's the latest statistics on dog bites and the latest attack or whatever. But how many of us grew up watching The Little Rascals? Does everybody remember the dog Petey?
Mm-hmm.
He was a pit bull, and the 1900s, early 1900s, pit bulls were considered, nanny dogs. I mean, how many times do you go back and see an antique photo and there's a child and a dog in it? Pit bull.
Yep.
The whole fighting dog. Granted, and I'm sure somebody's going to say, well, pit bulls were used as fighting dogs. Yeah, they were used as fighting dogs in like the middle and dark ages, and that was because it was a different time. But most respectable, responsible breeders are breeding not for the aggressive trait, but they're breeding for a calm, even-tempered dog that, despite the fact that they're intensely smart, I mean, they're so super intelligent, but, a responsible breeder is going to go after that calm, even, loyal, intelligent dog. And it just makes me so mad.
Here, we've got about a little over 2 minutes left.
Right.
I want to thank you for coming on here, and that is I want to thank you for sharing one of the most amazing stories that we've had on the show yet. That's just awesome about the little girl.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for coming on here, and we'll probably get you on here again sometime. When you get something big coming up to share with me, I would love to have you on here and hear some of your adventures and such. We're always looking to find out ways people impact the world, and you and Jazz are definitely impacting the world around you for the better. Folks, this is Crossfire. I want to go ahead and sign off. We're fixing to close the show. I'm going to stay after for just a couple of minutes and tease next week's show. But I want to remind everybody, of course, this is our standard closing song. I think everybody loves. We talked about it already. But just remind everybody, we live in a world of spandex and costumes and high ideals. We really don't need to take ourselves too seriously. So for our closing theme, our usual song, here we go.
We're men.
My God, I love this song.
We roam around the forest looking for light. We're men. We're men in time. We run from the rich and give to the poor. That's right. We may look like cities, but what would you say, or else we'll put out your light. We're men. We're men in tight. Always on guard, defending the people's rights. La 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 la. We're men in tights, tight, tight. Always on guard, defending the peaceful cry. When you're in a fix, just call for the men in tights. We're watch.
All right. Now, I've got just a few things coming. Again, thank you, Iris, for
Okay.
next week
Well,
we got...
thank you for giving... Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You're thanking me.
Okay. Thank you for so much for giving me this opportunity to come out again. It's really important that people, you know, even if you only just touch one life, you know, you've changed a life. So I really thank you for this opportunity to share with what I do and what I really feel passionate about.
All right, and folks, next week we've got the hardest working man in the real life superhero community, Danger Man, Urban Danger Man, that is. Week after, we got Cognito and Moxie are going to be on here talking about their thoughts on the real life superhero community. And coming up in August, we got Executrix, Razorhawk, Phoenix Jones, Artista will be back talking about his Iron Red project, the Iron Red project. We're going to talk neighborhood watches with the Eye, and on September 11th, Patriot Day, we're going to have the return of Valerie Finnegan and Heroes Fallen Studios. So we've got some big shows coming up, and we are looking at some options to get this back up to our 2-hour program. I've got one option. We may be moving from Blog Talk Radio to another carrier here in the next couple of weeks to give us a chance to have a longer show, because it's like shows like this. I hate that we only have a half hour, Iris. I'm sure you could go on and on.
I'll come back and visit another time.
Oh, yes, definitely. We'll get
That's
you
okay.
back on here.
One of these days, maybe Eris and I will visit you in studio.
Yep, maybe I can get you a Stormbringer out here at the same time. I'm sure y'all could talk pit bulls for days.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's, you know, they're such a maligned breed, and a lot of the fear comes from misinformation.
I see the same thing with Dobermans and some other breeds too. You know, I knew when I was growing up, there was a movie about the killer Dobermans, and it's like everybody was afraid of them. You know, and you know, like any dog, there's bad-tempered dogs that are pit bulls. There's bad-tempered Chihuahuas. I had one in the neighborhood called the Devil Dog.
Oh yeah.
Because she had a bad attitude.
Any animal, if you treat it badly, is going to start acting out. It's all in the way you handle it. It's the way it's raised. It's the way it's bred. You know, so I mean, it's, you know, when you're dealing with any animal, you have to remember you're not dealing with another human being. You're dealing with an animal. They don't have the ability to, you know, do right from wrong. They're going on instinct. You know. So, you know, but, you know, so you just kind of have to learn from it. And there is a lot of misinformation out there about all types of breeds.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to have to let you go. I've got a mission I've got to go on here in the next minute, so I can't stay too long. Again, thank you. This show was worth it just to hear that one awesome story.
Oh, yeah, and I'll remember that little girl forever, you know.
You honestly need to write that up and put it on Facebook for everybody to read and link to this so they can hear it, because I've had tears running down my face as you were telling me that kids, dogs impact the world. I mean, just wow. Yeah.
If I can leave one message with your, with your listeners, if you absolutely must have a dog, please don't buy it from an animal store. Go to your local rescue group or go to your local shelter. There's hundreds and thousands of dogs looking for good, loving homes. You know, anybody who asks you $800 for a puppy is insane. You know, because you're really funding puppy mills, and those are just inhumane. Please go to an animal shelter, adopt an animal. You know, save a life. Give a pet a second chance.
Definitely. Thank you again, and I'm going to wrap this up and sign out for Superhero Academy on Blog Talk Radio. This is Crossfire the Crusader. I will see you next week. Same cross time, same cross channel, using the old Adam West bit there, and try and impact the world this week. Do something to change somebody's life for the better. You have a good day. I'll meet y'all on the high road.